So you want to own a football team, not just wear the jersey, not just sit in the front row. You want the contracts, the stadium, the players, the badge, the history. Every weekend, tens of thousands of fans fill your stadium. Millions more watch from around the world. Your club's logo appears on television screens, social media feeds, newspapers, and jerseys worn by people who have never even visited your city. It looks like the ultimate investment. Power, fame, influence. A business that never runs out of customers. After all, football is the world's most popular sport. More than 5 billion people follow it in one way or another. Surely owning one of its biggest clubs must be like owning a machine that prints money. That's what most people believe. But the reality is far stranger. Because the day you become the owner of a football club, you stop thinking like a fan. You start thinking like a CEO. Every player becomes an asset, and every asset comes with a price. Every contract becomes a financial commitment. Every injury becomes a business problem. Every defeat becomes more than just a bad result. It becomes lost revenue, a missed opportunity, a disappointed sponsor, an angry fan base, and sometimes a decision that costs hundreds of millions of dollars. Here's what makes football different from almost every other business. Success isn't guaranteed by spending more. Some clubs spend a fortune and still fail. Others spend less and somehow beat teams worth 10 times as much. There are seasons where one goal, one penalty, or one mistake changes the financial future of an entire club. A single match can decide whether you earn an extra $100 million or lose it forever. And that's why football is one of the most unpredictable businesses on earth. The strangest part? Some billionaire owners lose money almost every single year, yet they refuse to sell their clubs. Why? Because the real value of a football team isn't always hiding on the pitch. It's hidden inside television contracts, global sponsorships, commercial rights, brand value, and something almost impossible to measure: the loyalty of millions of fans. By the end of this video, you'll understand what a football club actually costs, where the money really comes from, why even billionaires struggle to make profits, and why owning a football team may be one of the most fascinating investments in the modern economy. Before we talk about money, we need to answer a much simpler question. What exactly are you buying? Because most people think they're buying a football team. They're not. They're buying an entire business. A business that never truly sleeps. Every single day, someone is selling tickets. Someone is negotiating sponsorship deals. Someone is scouting the next superstar. Someone is managing millions of dollars in player contracts. Someone is planning the next season even before the current one has ended. The players may be the face of the club, but they're only one piece of a much larger machine. Behind every 90-minute match, there are hundreds of employees, coaches, analysts, doctors, physiotherapists, nutritionists, lawyers, marketing teams, finance departments, media crews, ground staff, security, ticketing, hospitality, and executives making decisions worth millions of dollars. Then there's the stadium. From the outside, it's a place where football is played. From the inside, it's one of the most valuable assets a club can own. When there's no match, it's hosting concerts, corporate events, private tours, business conferences, restaurants, museums, retail stores. The stadium isn't just a football venue. It's a business that needs to generate revenue every week of the year. And then comes the most valuable asset of all: the fans. Unlike ordinary customers, football supporters don't simply buy a product. They build an emotional connection. They pass their club down from one generation to the next. A supporter who falls in love with a club at the age of 10 might still be buying tickets, shirts, and memberships 50 years later. Very few businesses enjoy that kind of loyalty. That's why the biggest football clubs aren't just sports organizations. They're global brands. Brands that can reach millions of people with a single announcement. Brands that companies are willing to pay enormous amounts of money to be associated with. Which brings us to the first reality every new owner discovers. The purchase price is only the beginning. Because once the cameras disappear and the celebration ends, the bills start arriving. And that's where the real economics of owning a football team begin. The first bill isn't for a new superstar. It isn't for a bigger stadium. And it isn't for a championship celebration. It's payroll. Every single month, regardless of whether your team wins or loses, your players expect to be paid. Your manager expects to be paid. Your coaching staff, your medical team, your scouts, your academy coaches, your security staff, your groundskeepers, your office employees, hundreds of people, all waiting for the same thing: a paycheck. For the biggest clubs, player wages alone can reach hundreds of millions of dollars every year. And here's the dangerous part: those contracts are guaranteed. If your star striker tears his ACL in the first game of the season, you still owe him every dollar you promised. If your highest paid player scores 5 goals, or none at all, his salary doesn't change. The money keeps leaving your bank account, week after week, month after month. Then come the performance bonuses. Win the league, pay a bonus. Qualify for Europe, pay another bonus. Win a cup, more bonuses. Even individual achievements can trigger additional payments, written into player contracts. Suddenly, a successful season becomes far more expensive than most fans ever imagine. But success is still cheaper than failure, because failing to qualify for major competitions can cost a club tens of millions in lost revenue. That's the balancing act every owner faces. Spend too little and your team isn't competitive. Spend too much and one disappointing season can create a financial crisis. Some clubs have learned this lesson the hard way. They chase trophies by offering enormous contracts only to discover that expensive players don't guarantee success. Instead, they were left with massive wage bills, declining results, and years of financial pressure. In football, building a great team isn't just about finding the best players. It's about finding players whose value on the pitch is greater than the money you're paying them. And that's one of the hardest things in sports, because every transfer window changes the market. One breakout season can double a player's value overnight. One serious injury can cut it in half, which means the most valuable assets in your business are also the most unpredictable. And that's before you've paid a single dollar to actually buy them. And that's where football becomes unlike almost any other business. Imagine running a company where replacing a single employee could cost $100 million before they even start their first day. Welcome to the transfer market. This is where clubs don't just compete on the pitch. They compete with their wallets. When a club wants to sign a player, it usually has to buy that player's contract from another club. Sometimes the price is reasonable. Sometimes it's so high it makes headlines around the world. But the transfer fee is only the beginning. Now add the player's salary, signing bonus, agent commission, performance bonuses, image rights, relocation costs, taxes. By the time the deal is complete, the real cost can be dramatically higher than the number announced in the news. And here's the risk: nobody can guarantee the player will succeed. A record-breaking signing can become a club legend, or he can spend most of the season injured, lose confidence, struggle to fit the system, and become one of the most expensive mistakes in football history. That's why smart clubs don't just buy talent. They buy potential. They search for young players before the rest of the world notices them, develop them, increase their value, and sometimes sell them for several times what they originally paid. In many ways, football clubs invest in players the same way venture capital firms invest in startups. Most investments won't become superstars, but one extraordinary success can pay for several failures. The clubs that understand this often stay competitive for years. The clubs that ignore it can spend hundreds of millions, chasing short-term success only to discover they've built a team they can no longer afford. Because in football, buying players is easy. Building a sustainable business around them is the real challenge. And while transfers grab all the headlines, the biggest source of money doesn't come from buying players at all. It comes from something billions of people
Every
watch
time a
without
match
ever
begins,
thinking
millions of
about who
people
pays
press
for
play.
it. Some are watching
Every
from
time
their
a
living
match
rooms.
begins,
Some
millions
from
of people
sports
press
bars.
play.
Some on
Some
their
are watching
phones
from
during
their
lunch
living
breaks.
rooms.
To
Some
fans,
from
it's
sports
just another
bars.
game.
Some on
To
their
club
phones
owners,
during lunch
it's one of the
breaks.
biggest
To
paydays
fans,
of the
it's just
season.
another game.
Because the
To
real
club
product
owners, it's
isn't
one of
just
the biggest
football.
paydays
It's
of the
attention.
season.
Television
Because the real
networks
product
don't
isn't
spend
just
billions
football.
because they
It's
love the
attention.
sport.
They
Television
spend
networks
billions
don't
because
spend
football
billions
captures
because they
something
love the
incredibly
sport.
valuable.
They spend billions
People's time.
because football
The longer
captures
fans
something
watch, the more
incredibly
advertisements
valuable.
can be sold.
People's time.
The more
The longer
subscriptions can
fans
be
watch, the more
justified.
advertisements
And the more
can be
valuable
sold.
the
The
broadcasting
more
rights
subscriptions
become.
can be justified.
That's why the biggest leagues.
And the more valuable the
Negotiate
broadcasting
television
rights become.
deals worth
That's why the
billions of
biggest
dollars.
leagues. Every
Negotiate
season that
television
money is
deals
divided
worth
among the
billions
clubs,
of dollars.
but not equally.
Every season
the
that
biggest
money
teams
is divided
usually
among the
receive
clubs,
more through larger,
but not equally.
audiences.
The
Better
biggest
commercial
teams usually
opportunities
receive
and
more through
consistent
larger.
participation
Audiences
in
better
elite
commercial
competitions,
opportunities,
which
and
creates a powerful
consistent
cycle.
participation
The
in
clubs
elite
with the most
competitions,
money can usually
which creates
afford
a
better
powerful
players.
cycle.
Better
The
players
clubs with the
often
most
produce
money
better
can usually
results.
afford better
Better
players.
results attract
Better
more
players
fans.
often
More
produce
fans
better
attract
results.
bigger sponsors.
Better results
and
attract
bigger
more
sponsors
fans.
bring even more
fans
money.
attract bigger
The rich
sponsors.
clubs become
and
even
bigger
richer.
sponsors bring
While
even
smaller
more
clubs
money.
fight,
The
just
rich
to keep
clubs
up.
become
But
even
television
richer.
money
While
isn't
smaller
guaranteed
clubs
forever.
fight just to keep
Miss
up.
an important
But
competition.
television money
Finish
isn't
lower in the
guaranteed
league
forever.
or spend
Miss an
several
important
seasons
competition.
underperforming.
Finish
And
lower
those
in the league
broadcasting checks
or
can
spend
shrink
several
surprisingly
seasons
fast.
underperforming.
That's
And
why
those
owners
broadcasting
obsess over
checks can
every
shrink
match.
surprisingly
Because
fast.
90 minutes
That's
on
why
the
owners
pitch
obsess
can influence
over every
years of
match.
financial growth.
Because 90
But
minutes
even
on the
television
pitch
revenue
can
has a
influence
limit.
years of
The
financial
clubs that
growth.
become global
But even
giants
television
discover
revenue
something
has a
even
limit.
more profitable.
The clubs that
They
become
stop selling
global
football
giants discover
and start
something
selling their
even more
brand to the
profitable.
entire world.
They stop selling football and start selling their brand to the entire world. Think about the last time you saw the jersey of a famous football club. The logo on the front wasn't there by accident. It was bought for an extraordinary amount of money. Every season, global brands compete for the chance to appear on the shirts of the world's biggest clubs because they know something most people don't. A football club isn't just a sports team. It's one of the most powerful advertising platforms on earth. Every goal, every celebration, every trophy lift, every viral social media post. Millions of people see those logos. That's exposure money can't easily buy anywhere else. And the jersey sponsor is only the beginning. Training kits, sleeve sponsors, stadium naming rights, official airline partners, banking partners, automotive partners, technology partners, energy drink partners, luxury watch partners. The list goes on. Some clubs have dozens of commercial partnerships running at the same time, each one worth millions. Then comes merchandise. Every time a fan buys a jersey, a scarf, a jacket, or even a coffee mug with the club's badge, another stream of revenue begins. Now multiply that by millions of supporters across every continent. A single successful season can send merchandise sales through the roof. A superstar signing can sell hundreds of thousands of jerseys within days. Sometimes one player can generate enough commercial excitement to recover a significant part of his transfer cost. That's why football clubs don't only evaluate how a player performs on the pitch. They also think about how many shirts he'll sell, how many followers he'll attract, how many sponsors he'll bring. Because modern football isn't just about winning matches. It's about building a global business. But here's the catch. The bigger your brand becomes, the bigger your expectations become. Fans don't expect you to compete. They expect you to win every single season. And trying to meet those expectations is where owners start, spending money faster than they ever imagined. Winning sounds expensive, because it is. The moment your club starts competing for major trophies, everything becomes more expensive. Your best players want new contracts. Your manager wants a bigger budget. Agents know you're under pressure. And every selling club suddenly adds another $10 or $20 million to the asking price. Success creates leverage. The better your team becomes, the more everyone expects you to pay. Then come the hidden costs. Private charter flights, five-star hotels, state-of-the-art training facilities, sports scientists, data analysts, recovery technology, nutrition programs, youth academies, medical equipment. None of these things appear on the scoreboard, but every top club spends millions on them every year. Because in modern football, the smallest advantage can decide an entire season. One extra point, one extra goal, one extra victory can be worth tens of millions of dollars. But chasing perfection comes with a dangerous risk. Some owners become obsessed with winning. They keep spending, season after season, believing the next superstar, the next manager, or the next transfer window will finally deliver the trophy. Sometimes it works. Many times it doesn't. And when success fails to arrive, those expensive contracts don't disappear. The debt stays. The wages stay. The expectations stay. That's how clubs with enormous fan bases can suddenly find themselves struggling financially. Not because football stopped making money, but because spending started growing faster than revenue. And that's the difference between running a football club and running a sustainable football business. The clubs that survive for decades aren't always the ones that spend the most. They're the ones that know exactly when to spend and when to walk away. Because the smartest owners understand something that emotional owners often forget. In football, the most expensive decision isn't the player you sign. It's the player you should never have signed in the first place. So if running a football club is this expensive, why do billionaires keep buying them? Because they're playing a different game. Most people measure success by annual profit. Billionaires often measure success by long-term value. A football club is more than a business. It's a global asset. Unlike a factory or an office building a famous football club can't simply be recreated. Its history can't be copied. Its supporters can't be manufactured. Its identity has been built over decades, sometimes more than a century. That kind of scarcity is incredibly valuable. As the sport becomes more global, the biggest clubs continue reaching new audiences. A child in New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, or Sao Paulo can become a lifelong supporter without ever visiting the city where the club was founded. Every new fan represents future revenue, future merchandise sales, future streaming subscriptions, future sponsorship value, and eventually a higher club valuation. That's why some owners are willing to lose money today, because they believe the club itself will be worth far more 10 or 20 years from now. History has shown they're often right. Many clubs that sold for a few $100 million years ago are now worth several billion. Not because the stadium suddenly became bigger, not because ticket prices doubled, but because the brand kept growing. In other words, football isn't always about maximizing yearly profit. It's about owning one of the world's rarest assets and waiting for its value to grow. But that strategy only works if your club survives the difficult years. Because football has a habit of punishing owners who mistake passion for good business decisions. And that's where the biggest financial mistakes begin. Every football club dreams of lifting trophies. But some clubs become so obsessed with winning they forget the numbers. And numbers always catch up. It usually starts with one big signing, then another, a higher wage, a longer contract, a new manager, a bigger transfer budget. Each decision seems reasonable on its own, but together they create something dangerous. A payroll the club can no longer support. Now imagine your team has a terrible season. You miss out on a major competition. Ticket demand begins to fall. Sponsors start renegotiating their deals. Broadcast revenue drops. But your expenses? They barely change. The players are still under contract. The staff still need to be paid. The loans still need monthly payments. The stadium still costs money to operate. Suddenly, a club that looked unstoppable is fighting to stay financially alive. This is why smart owners never build their business around one successful season. They prepare for the bad years. Because football is unpredictable. A referee's decision, a missed penalty, an injury in the final minutes. Any one of those moments can change the direction of an entire season. And sometimes the financial future of the club changes with it. The owners who survive for decades aren't always the richest. They're the most disciplined. They know when to invest, when to negotiate, and most importantly, when to say no. Because in football, protecting your club's future is often more valuable than chasing one more trophy. Which brings us to the biggest question of all. After everything we've covered, does owning a football team actually make you rich? Or are billionaires buying something that money alone can never measure? Here's the surprising answer. Yes, owning a football team can make you incredibly wealthy, but probably not in the way most people imagine. The biggest profits rarely come from selling tickets, or jerseys, or even winning trophies. They come from owning an asset that becomes more valuable over time. A club that builds a global fan base, secures long-term commercial partnerships, develops young talent, and consistently competes at the highest level can see its valuation grow dramatically over the years. That's why many owners think in decades, not seasons. To them, a football club isn't just a sports organization. It's a media company, an entertainment brand, a real estate asset, a global marketing platform, and one of the few businesses where emotional loyalty can last a lifetime. Of course, none of this is guaranteed. A few bad decisions can erase years of progress. A mountain of debt can destroy even the most historic clubs. And chasing success without financial discipline has ended countless ownership dreams. That's the reality behind the glamour. The fans see 90 minutes. The owner lives with the other 525,510 minutes of the year, negotiating contracts, meeting sponsors, managing budgets, making impossible decisions, trying to satisfy millions of supporters who all expect victory. Because the moment you buy a football club, you inherit something much bigger than a business. You inherit history, expectation, pressure, and the responsibility of protecting a legacy that existed long before you arrived and will hopefully remain long after you're gone. So can owning a football team make you rich? Absolutely. But the greatest owners understand one simple truth. The trophies create the memories. The business creates the wealth. And the clubs that master both don't just win championships. They build empires. But before you decide that owning a football club is the ultimate investment, there's one final lesson. The clubs that survive for generations aren't always the ones with the biggest budgets. They're the ones that make the smartest decisions when nobody is watching. They invest in youth academies because tomorrow's superstar is far cheaper than today's. They build scouting networks searching for talent long before the rest of the world notices. They expand into new markets, turning local supporters into global communities. And they understand that every fan is more than a customer. They're a lifelong relationship. That's why the world's greatest football clubs aren't built in a single transfer window. They're built over decades. One smart decision at a time. One generation of players replacing the next. One season laying the foundation for another. Because in football, success isn't rented. It's earned, year after year. The owners who chase headlines often disappear just as quickly. The owners who build systems create clubs that outlive them. So if you ever find yourself dreaming about owning a football team, don't picture the trophy parade first. Picture the balance sheet. Picture the board meetings. Picture the difficult negotiations. Picture the nights when a single decision could determine the future of thousands of employees, millions of supporters, and a club with more than 100 years of history. Only then will you understand what you're really buying. You're not just buying 11 players. You're buying hope, pressure, legacy, a global brand, and one of the most emotionally powerful businesses ever created. That's the real economics of owning a football team. And maybe that's why football has never really been about money. Money builds the stadium. Money signs the players. Money pays the wages. But money alone has never guaranteed greatness. Every season begins the same way. Hope. Every owner believes this could be the year. Every manager believes the plan will work. Every player believes they're capable of something special. And every fan believes that, somehow, their club will find a way. That's what makes football different from almost every other business. You're not selling a product. You're selling moments that people remember for the rest of their lives. A last-minute winner. A miraculous comeback. A championship celebration. Or even the heartbreak that keeps supporters coming back the following season. Those moments can't be manufactured. They have to be earned. And that's exactly why the world's biggest clubs continue growing in value. Because their greatest asset isn't the stadium. It isn't the television contracts. It isn't even the players. It's the millions of people who care enough to keep believing. Long after the final whistle. Long after the season ends. Long after one generation of players has been replaced by another. The club remains. Its history grows. Its story continues. And with every passing year, its legacy becomes even more valuable. So if someone handed you the keys to one of the world's biggest football clubs tomorrow, you wouldn't just become the owner of a team. You'd become the guardian of a business worth billions, a brand recognized across the globe, and a legacy that can never truly be measured on a balance sheet. Because in the end, football isn't just about winning matches. It's about building something that outlives every player, every manager, and every owner. And that's why the economics of owning a football team are unlike anything else in the world.